Thank you all for joining me, and so we're gonna get started with Higurashi When They Cry. Chapter 8, Matsuribayashi. Let's go! Matsuribayashi. At least let it end with a blissful dream. Festival accompanying chapter. The riddle you have been entrusted with solving now finally becomes unraveled. What must be done to stop the chain? And what will happen in the ultimate end? It's a showdown between the conclusion you reached and the one I reached. There is no difficulty. You should understand that now. Everyone is entitled to happiness. The difficult part is accepting that. Everyone is entitled to happiness. The difficult part is fulfilling that. I too am entitled to happiness. The difficult part is working out a compromise. Frederica Bernkastel. This is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to actual persons or organizations is entirely coincidental. The study was filled with piles of books and papers. In that study there was a full-figured old man writing something at his desk in utmost concentration. Oh wait, crap. There was also a little girl sorting out papers on the carpet. She almost looked as though she was playing with them, but the serious expression she was wearing made it clear that she wasn't. Grandpa? I'm done sorting them out. Thank you. Let's see, what happened? Look, there are lots of people with the same symptoms. It's way higher than the national average. That's exactly what I expected. There's an intriguing treatise over here too. Discusses psychosurgery and civilization. It also predicts the existence of parasites that inhabit the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is what causes emotions. That's right. Emotions aren't created by the heart. They're just side effects of the chemicals secreted by the organ known as the brain. If parasites capable of acting on that organ did exist, and spread to create a colony, then that colony's thoughts would be unified. So are parasites the cause of the spread of ideology? When ideologies clash, is that because different parasites are competing to expand their habitat? That or to expand religion, to expand national borders, or to expand a race. It's hypothesized that our differing cultural communities and their conflict are the result of parasites influencing human thoughts. There are people in other countries who think the same thing as you, Grandpa. Wait. I'm pretty sure I know who the little girl is. Of course there are. There are countless parasites in this earth, and it's well known that some coexist with their hosts, and some control their hosts. We've also discovered plenty of parasites that infect humans. Yet despite that, we adamantly deny the possibility that parasites could infect humans and control their hosts. Even the hypothesis of such a thing. Why do you think that is? Humans aren't special in any way. Because that hypothesis would also mean changing our view to see the spread of ideologies from the perspective of epidemiology. If conflicts in ideology can be resolved through debate, then they're peaceful. If those conflicts occur epidemically, they become frightening. And if one were to treat bad thoughts or the spread of culture as an epidemic, think about the Black Plague in Europe during the Middle Ages. Vile infectious disease spread. They forced infected people into hospitals and didn't release them until they completely recovered. Some even died in those hospitals. They burned their corpses. They confiscated and burned everything those patients touched, for fear the plague infected it. They even suspected families of infection and forced them into hospitals. So they'd hospitalize healthy people over individual ideas? Replace an idea with a disease. The rest is the same. Patients won't be released until they completely recover. People burn everything that may have been touched by the patient. They force the patient's family to go to the hospital. People are free to think what they will, right? Thoughts aren't pests. If an idea was created by parasites, it would be exactly the same as a plague. In other words, an idea is like an incurable epidemic. So you mean anyone with a different idea is treated like they have a disease? That's right. If we bring this to its logical conclusion, parasites could be responsible for mass murders of people belonging to different races or religions. But this can be seen as justifying genocide. Therefore, talking about parasites in brains has been taboo since the war. What does taboo mean? It means something people shouldn't get involved with. That's why nobody researches these things. Nobody even remembers anything about parasites that live in the brain. They assume that parasites which control humans simply don't exist. Haha, that's almost funny. How can they prove something doesn't exist? That's just impossible. Exactly. Proving that the devil exists is easy. You just have to show him to someone. But you can't prove he doesn't exist. You can't show somebody something that doesn't exist. Huh. It's almost as if the parasites in the brain are controlling people so they can keep their own existence a secret. Me and my grandfather shared a happy laugh together. Humans are simply another animal in this natural world. Might be at the top of the food chain, but it's foolish to think that we're superiors to others. Humans can be controlled by parasites. Just because the existence of such parasites hasn't been proven doesn't mean they don't exist. They exist. I know they do. That's happened before in the scientific world, right? That's right. Not all scientists are recognized for their work while they're alive. There were many who were ridiculed and couldn't prove their theories to be true. But Grandpa, if your theory will be recognized before you die. Otherwise, it'd be so sad. Don't worry. God doesn't ignore people who work hard. Hard work always pays off in the end. But when will that happen? Nobody knows when God is going to descend from heaven. Just like you never know when you'll be robbed. So we always have to be alert and ready so we don't miss our chance. It was something my grandfather said all the time. Nobody knows when efforts will bear fruit. But it will happen one day. That's why you must always work hard so you have no regrets when the time comes. Your efforts will bear fruit someday. That's what he meant. But is it going to happen before you die? Even though there are so many scientists whose work weren't recognized while they were alive? It was such a cruel thing to say, but I didn't mean to be cruel. I had seen how hard my grandfather had been working. I also knew he wouldn't live forever. I just wanted his work to gain recognition before he died. Do you know of the resurrection of Jesus Christ? Yeah. He was crucified and resurrected after 3 days. He told me about it. How do you think Jesus was resurrected? Did he just get up as if he was waking up in the morning? He was buried after his execution, so his body was in the ground. Did he break open the tombstone and crawl out like a zombie? No. That wouldn't be called a resurrection. Sinners who killed Jesus imagined exactly the same thing. Jesus predicted just before he was executed that he would come back to life after 3 days. Sinners buried Jesus, sealed his tomb, and posted guards to watch over it. Jesus meant wasn't that he would resurrect physically. It meant his teachings would be resurrected. After 3 days, Jesus' teachings were resurrected and people regained their belief. Hearts of those who wanted to be shown the proper way revived his teachings. That's what the resurrection of Jesus is all about. Back to life in the hearts of his believers. Jesus doesn't physically exist on this earth, but he exists in people's hearts. In other words, that's when Jesus became an existence superior to humans. Even if it's after the author's death, as long as his work receives a fair evaluation, it will live again as a great achievement. Even if my body is gone by then, my life will return and receive recognition. Does that mean you'll become a god just like Jesus did? Indeed, my research will be recognized for what it is someday. It's when I'll become a god. That's why I'm not in a rush to achieve that recognition. Grandpa's off his meds again. Don't know when that day will come. God doesn't know that either. Day will come. That's why I need to continue to work as hard as I can. It was very sad to hear my grandfather say that his life would end one day. He wasn't ill, and he didn't only have a few years left to live. But set next to the average lifespan, his remaining years didn't look like much. The person left in my life was my grandfather, so I didn't even want to consider what it would be like with him gone. Grandfather must have remembered that I didn't like to talk about that subject. Tender smile, he gently patted my head. Of course, I want my research to be recognized before I die. I'll do my best. I'll do my best to help you, too. I purposely didn't mention the before you die part. I caught myself before I said it. Thank you. It makes me very happy to hear. Grandfather smiled in satisfaction. His research wasn't exactly outrageous. He wasn't trying to uncover the mysteries of the universe. He was only searching for the possibility that parasites could be responsible for human behavior. Nothing more than that. Nothing outrageous. Define outrageous, please. Use that word, but I do not think it really wasn't a wild idea. We even had some leads. Hinamizawa Village, Shishibone City. The villagers there are possessed by a powerful homesickness. They are unable to return. They allegedly behave abnormally as if they're cursed. There are also some bizarre rules in place in the village based on their belief system. When he was working with the military during the war, my grandfather noticed similarities between the people in Hinamizawa and assumed that some kind of existence was responsible for their odd behavior. He'd been researching it ever since then. In the middle of the 20th century, numerous strange diseases were discovered all over Japan. Most of them were caused by infectious parasites, and people started to pay attention to this forgotten field of study. Grandfather's research was simply one of those investigations in such diseases. Therefore, he believed it would be published amongst other research and attain recognition soon. But if his research didn't bear fruit before his death, I wanted to continue it. Want to continue his research. Grandfather taught me, resurrection isn't something that happens physically. It's when your life's work is appreciated. That's what he meant by resurrection. That's when he'll become a god. So when my grandfather dies, he'll still be with me forever. I wouldn't have to be alone ever again. I'll always be with my grandpa. Our works will gain recognition. We'll both become gods, gaining eternal peace. I will make my grandfather into a god. I will become a god. Therefore, will be granted eternity. We'll be together forever and ever. So, it's no surprise, but Takano has always been quite, since a young age has been a bit off. I was looking at the key on a keychain. The key was labeled Hen House, but the lock Eriko was trying to open didn't belong to that door. It should have opened effortlessly. At least that's what was supposed to happen. But it didn't open. I noticed beads of sweat forming on Eriko's forehead. She was the one who came up with this idea. Eriko was starting to panic. The rest of us started to panic too. This only opened the hen house. Stop, let's go back. Shush. We're supposed to be cleaning out the hen house. They found us back here. If they found out why we were here and why we were trying to open up the lock to the back door, then all four of us were sure to be sentenced to Splayed Piggy. Don't panic, Eriko. That key opens this lock, right? Already tried it, right? You shut up for a minute. This is the right key. It's just hard to open, that's all. She was almost shrieking. Our hearts were pounding loudly. It was as though the sound of our heartbeats was echoing throughout the hallway. At that point, we heard footsteps that didn't belong to a child. Shush! Somebody's coming. 3 of us held our breath, but Eriko didn't hear it. She kept fussing with the lock and the key, as if everything would be okay if she could just open the lock. Eriko, somebody's coming, be quiet. I know this is the right key. I'm not dreaming, I already tried it and it opened. Come on, why isn't this working? If this lock is open, we can be happy. We can say goodbye to this hell. Eriko, someone's coming. My father and mother died. I don't know exactly how old they were. I was too young to remember. They went shopping without me, and that must be why they were punished. It was a train accident, but a terrible disaster. A lot of people died in that incident. But maybe my father was one of the lucky ones. He was still alive when he arrived at the hospital, so he was able to share his final words with me. My mother died instantly. Daddy, 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 Daddy! I didn't want to admit that this person I could hardly recognize was my father. As I called out to him, I hoped it was someone else instead. But, unfortunately, it was my father. Maybe I shouldn't have woken him, because when I woke him, he was reminded of the miserable agony that he had forgotten. Daddy! Daddy, Daddy! Tried to move his right arm, so he could pat my head, but his arm was wrapped in bandages. His hand was no longer there. I couldn't find his hand anywhere on the bed. I only had scary memories of his right hand. Its main job was to slap me when I did something bad, but I never wished it to be gone. Besides, that hand also patted my head, even though that only happened a few times. It was a big, warm hand, and it stroked my head very gently. No matter what good deeds I did, it could no longer rub my head. No, his hand was the least of his worries. He had to go into emergency surgery. Doctors already warned me that the chance of him surviving was very low. That was why I was allowed to see him regardless of his condition. Not only could he no longer rub my head, he might be gone forever. Daddy, the surgery will make you better, right? Daddy, you'll get better, right? Right? Listen carefully. Daddy might not make it. If I die, you have to be strong, okay? No. You'll get better. Wait, okay. No, you'll get better. The doctor is going to make you better. So you're not going to die. He was a stubborn and old-fashioned father. He believed endurance was a virtue and he never complained about anything. That was why I couldn't believe he actually said he might not make it. I tried desperately to deny his words, but even that wish wouldn't prolong his life. My father, knowing that his time was limited, tried to tell me some important things. But I interrupted his efforts by crying like a baby. I just wanted him to slap me, just like he used to do every time I cried like a baby. But he would never slap me again. Listen well, your mother and I both lost all our family in the war. So, after I'm dead, there won't be anyone left to take care of you. He didn't need to tell me that. Parents used to tell me that all the time, so I was aware of that fact. In other words, my father was the only relative I had left in this entire world. If I die, you can count on Dr. Takano. Dr. Hifumi Takano. Can you say it? Hifumi Takano. That's right. Dr. Hifumi Takano. He's my former teacher. He will help you. Teddy. The doctors came into the room in a hurry. Wanted to tell me something else, but the doctor stopped him from talking, so I wasn't able to hear him. I was kicked out of the room. I didn't know what to do. Nobody told me how my father was doing or when the surgery was going to start. And nobody told me that was going to be the last conversation I ever had with my father. I think I asked people at the government office about Takano. They'd asked me if I knew his phone number. I said I didn't. Then they didn't ask me anything further. Sometimes they told me they'd look into it, but nothing led to anything. They couldn't find me a guardian, so I ended up going to an orphanage. At the time, there were plenty of orphans from the war, so though there were many orphanages around, they were all full. There were also some orphanages run by civilians. I was sent to one of those civilian orphanages. There was no profit to be had in taking in an orphan in the first place. So I thought those civilians who were running orphanages must have been very good people. I was sure they hoped that the children would grow in this loving environment and enter into society with a sense of gratitude. But reality isn't so kind. How many children in this world can actually express their gratitude towards their parents in the first place? Children are supposed to be nurtured by their parents' love. Therefore, when that environment is destroyed, their hearts are wounded. Every child has his or her own personality. Receiving affection doesn't guarantee that a child will become someone angelic. Not everyone's heart can be healed. That was why there are some problem kids at the orphanage. Maybe I shouldn't call them problem kids, though. The sadness and despair of losing their parents, and the anger at having to hide such feelings filled those kids' hearts. Spending time individually with the children could have solved their problems. But at the orphanage where I was, none of the staff members even tried to spend time with them or put in an effort to understand them. All they could do was make sure that the kids followed the rules. Therefore, they could only see the children's emotional pleas for help as problems. In this world, nobody expresses love without expecting something in return. The person who founded that orphanage was expecting something in return as well. He wanted the children to appreciate him. That was why such a faint dream was destroyed by cruel reality. The children called the orphanage a prison, and nobody appreciated the staff at all. In fact, all they did was complain. That made the staff slowly realize that love alone couldn't run a facility like that. Just like how the children called it a prison. The staff started to recognize the facility as a prison too. It was a chain reaction resulting from mistrust on both sides. The staff bound the children with rules so they could suppress problem behavior. There was a framed picture of the founder of this orphanage, but I had never seen him in person. Was he satisfied with the fact that he put his own money into this social service? Or maybe he finally realized his dream of being surrounded by angelic children and being celebrated for what he did was simply that, a dream. I don't know. But there was one thing I'm certain of. Such a dream didn't exist at the orphanage. There were so many rules and several plausible standards outlined for us. The most valued one was silence. Children's chatter tends to increase each other's volume, just like mics drawing closer. And sometimes it leads to fights and the disturbance of order. So children were forbidden from speaking with each other. With those disallowed, they must have thought things would go smoothly. For I think I always heard people's voices at the orphanage. There were two kinds of voices. One was the staff yelling, and the other was children crying. We were not allowed to walk around inside of the orphanage freely, so we never knew who it was that was crying. One time, along with the crying and yelling, we heard the noise of metallic things being smashed against each other. We knew it was some kind of punishment, but there was no way for us to imagine what it was. We trembled, pretended we didn't hear anything, and kept working on our assignments. One of my roommates told me it was the casket punishment, but she didn't tell me any further, and I didn't want to know either. Even if we behave exactly the same way as yesterday, if the staff were in a bad mood, they might pick on us. So even if I didn't want to know, I might suddenly find out what the casket punishment is one day. The footsteps of a staff member were getting closer. We noticed them, so we straightened our backs and pretended we were studying hard. It's more important that the staff saw us doing so than actually getting any work done. I noticed the girl next to me was falling asleep, so I poked her with my elbow. That's my signal and straightened her back like the other children. It was almost evening. This was the hardest time for us to keep ourselves awake, and the most dangerous time. The door to our room opened and a mean-looking man showed up. Then they looked around to make sure none of us were falling asleep. Even if we were actually studying hard, if he thought we were asleep, we were out. That was why he had to make sure we appeared to be studying very hard. The man walked around our desks. I hoped he would just walk by me. That was when we all prayed, so we kept working on our homework. The more we pretended to study hard, the more we could hear the sound of metal objects. The sound of metal objects crashing into each other along with screams. We couldn't even imagine what the poor subject of that punishment was going through. Maybe there was something even worse than the casket punishment. To erase such fears, we tried to concentrate even harder on our work. We kept working, as the metal sounds and the screams went on forever. The only time we were allowed to exchange words with our roommates was right after turning the lights off to go to bed. Being located in the middle of the mountains, the orphanage was very quiet at night. After making sure the staff members were far enough from our room, we enjoyed talking amongst ourselves. That was the only leisure time allowed to us. Though it wasn't anything nice like enjoying pleasant conversation. Why? Because we mostly talked about others behind their backs. We spoke of things like that member of staff is only strict or unfair or malicious towards this person and so on. We just repeated those topics forever until someone couldn't keep themselves awake anymore. We even discussed how we could get back at the staff. We took revenge on all of them in our imagination. Some kids even started to cry when they talking about it, difficult as it was for us. Although the subjects we spoke of were negative, talking about them was the only way to vent our frustration. Even though we felt despair about tomorrow, we were able to fall asleep. Oh, hello, Sophie. Thank you very much for the head pat. Oh, and thank you for the fluid check. Pretty sure we're getting some of Takano's backstory right now, so. It's about the orphanage he was in. Sometimes a different subject popped up. It was about the Ryugoauko House of Love and Mercy on the other side of the river. Yeah, there I heard they get not only nap time, but snack time too. Plus their president's a very nice person. And the House of Love and Mercy was a privately run orphanage just like the one I was at. But it was a very kind facility, unlike ours. It seemed like a fantasy land compared to our current environment. A few years before, when this place was a lot worse, a few children tried to escape. It was hard to believe there was a time when this orphanage was even worse to live at. Supposedly 3 or 4 people tried to escape. I don't know the exact number though. They headed to the House of Love and Mercy. Their escape was a success. Except for one unlucky child, they were able to get to the property of the House of Love and Mercy. I guess the staff couldn't follow them into the other orphanage's property. In other words, the other's facility's property had to be out of their jurisdiction. The staff were frustrated that kids got away from them, and they dragged the one they caught back here. Sure, they wanted to bring back the others who got away from them too. Certain the staff were determined not to let a single one escape. It was easy to see that determination in the obstinate way they locked the place up after that event. But they were never able to bring back the ones that got away. No matter how much the staff were mortified, they couldn't reclaim the children and punish them. In other words, if you could make it to the House of Love and Mercy, then you could escape the evil clutches of this hell. On the other hand, the one they caught through such misery went through such misery afterwards. Yet the exact details of how he was punished were never passed down. All that remained were ominous phrases left by those who knew him at the time. The drowned ducky, the mashed caterpillar, the splayed piggy. I can't even imagine what kind of punishments they were. The only thing I can say is that those punishments were supposed to be far more harsh than the casket punishment, which was the most cruel punishment I knew of at the time. I can only imagine how horrible those punishments were from their ominous names. After that, the captured kid's wish came true and he was able to leave the orphanage. Was he able to leave this orphanage safely and enjoy his freedom while breathing in fresh air under the blue sky? According to the rumors, that wasn't what happened at all. While he was playing at the boiler room, he slipped and fell, injured his brain, and died. The children were instructed not to go into the boiler room after that incident. Everyone knew the boiler room was always locked. So everyone knew he was killed. And not just that, he was killed after being tortured. He was killed to teach the other children that they would face hell on earth if they tried to escape. Yet those who faced that risk and made it out obtained ordinary, average lives full of love and mercy's namesake, which were far better conditions than we lived in here. Maybe the House of Love and Mercy was really heaven. Maybe all the orphanages are pretty much the same. But compared to my orphanage, I bet anything else would have been better. Even if someone escaped successfully, the police would catch him. Then he'd be sent back to the orphanage, which would pretty much be the same as being killed. However, if they could reach the House of Love and Mercy, they'd take him in. They wouldn't send him back. By talking about escaping to the House of Love and Mercy, we were trying to forget how cruel reality was to us. Then one day, the leader of our group, Eriko, said to us quietly, "Would you try to escape? If you had a chance to." Who wouldn't want to escape from here? It was a rather foolish question, but that wasn't what she meant. If there was a chance to escape, would you take that chance knowing what you had to go through if you got caught? That was what she meant. Not one of us could answer immediately. If the previous escape incident was a total success, then we might have thought differently. But after that, the orphanage had tightened up security to prevent runaways. The doors and windows were locked heavily, and it wouldn't be at all easy to get out. Even if another group escape was planned, the success rate would be very low. 3 escaped and 1 was caught before. Maybe 2 would be caught next time. No, maybe everyone would be. If I could, I'd want to escape. The House of Love and Mercy is so far away. The bridge is long, too. We'll all be caught before we get there. Besides, we can't even go outside. Everything is locked up. There were locks all over the orphanage. To escape, you need a key for both the inside and the outside. And after the lights were turned off, even each section of the hallway is individually locked. Make no mistake, this was a prison. According to the rumors, orphanages receive government funding depending on the number of children they house. So if anyone escapes, they lose money. Also, if we were to expose the conditions at the orphanage, they would end up being inspected and things would get complicated for them. That was why they were so intent on keeping us locked up. Sure, if there was a chance, I would want to escape. Realistically, there's no way we could. Every door is locked. Well, did you know? The hen house in the courtyard uses the same key as the door to the back stairs. Eh? Really? Shh. Eriko shushed us. Sometimes, mass-produced locks take the same key. Of course, most places use different types of locks so that this won't happen, but the staff at the orphanage must have overlooked it. So there were 2 locks that used the same key at the orphanage. However, most of us never had a chance to even touch the keys. But there were a few exceptions. One of those was the hen house. Each room group took turns taking care of different chores. If your group was assigned to clean the hen house, you'd have to get the key to it from the teacher's office. You were supposed to return the key immediately after you were done. But while taking care of the hen house, the key was in the children's hands. Sorry, the soundtrack scene was kind of messing with me for a minute. Started to buzz in my ears. Wait, is something being... Okay, sorry, hold on a second. Well, the staff would occasionally come around to check. They couldn't keep an eye on us forever. Eriko-chan, you aren't thinking about using that key, are you? Let's not. It's too dangerous. Of course it's dangerous if there's only one of us. It's different if we're in a group. Wait, why? Do you know why only one kid was caught the last time they tried to escape? They were desperate, so to escape as a group they did something to increase the chance of success. That was why only one of them was caught. What did they do? Oh no. They scattered as they ran. They dashed in different directions. They waited until the day there were only a few people working at the orphanage and ran this way and that. So, although it depended on luck, it would increase the chance of success for sure. On your own, you'd probably have no hope. But if the staff were trying to chase after other children, then your own chance of escaping successfully would increase. In other words, Eriko was inviting us to escape with her. The more children joined, the more each of our chances would increase. But among us, there were children who tattled to the staff for their own benefit. So she had to be very careful about who she talked to. Eriko must have trusted us a lot. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. Yep, it's getting too dark. Eriko, meet Tomomi and Kikuko. 4 children. Do any of you want to stay here a day longer? The 3 of us shook our heads. But at the same time, we couldn't agree to escape with her either. Of course, we don't want to stay here a day longer or even an hour longer. Even if we did exactly the same thing as we did yesterday, we might get yelled at tomorrow. I can't stand this anymore. I can't stand living in fear of what to do and what not to do so I won't be yelled at. We all feel the same way. We could endure strict rules, but it was almost impossible to endure vague ones. It wasn't too much of a stretch to say that the rules depended on the mood of the staff. This is okay. That isn't okay. Such borderline rules change daily. And if we were to say anything about that, we would be treated horribly for it. We'll escape, even if I have to do it alone. Like I said, the more people that join, the better our chance. Think about it. If they find out about this henhouse key trick, they're sure to change the lock on the back door. In other words, we only have one chance. So even if you regret not joining in later, it'll be too late. But, oh, scared. Scared too. If we get caught, we'll be killed. Omi and Kiko weren't the only ones who felt afraid. The fear was perfectly understandable. Because all of a sudden the fear of the punishment that would follow had become very realistic. I'm sure Eriko felt the same way too. But her courage was suppressing her fear. Because of that, she shared her idea with us. So do you plan to stay here forever? No way. I know you're scared, but this isn't the only chance we have. You have to be brave enough, brave just once. And what about you, Miyoko? Don't you want to go with me? Unlike Tomomi and Kikuo, I wasn't trembling that much. Of course, I was scared in my own way, but compared to the other two, I must have appeared rather calm. Can we really escape? Of course, Eriko couldn't guarantee our success, but I had to ask her anyway. There's no guarantee. If you join me, I'll have a better chance of escaping than trying to run on my own. Of course, the same goes for you, too. Eriko gave a calculated reason, but I'm sure she just wanted a friend to agree with her. And this was probably more important to her than increasing her chances to escape. Tomomi, Kikuo, if you're too scared, then I won't force you. Miyoku and I will escape ourselves. 2 is enough. Well... Eriko rushed the two to make up their minds. It almost looked cold, but that was our way of mustering their courage. Because it was very possible that, regardless of the outcome of our escape attempt, as our roommates, those two would be held responsible. It's not like we'll do it tomorrow. Our turn to take care of the hen house is in a week. We'll wait for the perfect time to do it. If we don't feel that it's safe, then we'll wait until our next turn. Be very careful. The rotation of the staff and the timing were important, but also we had to know the way to the House of Love and Mercy. We're planning to split up, so we had to know the area. I made up my mind. Okay, I'm coming with you. Let's time our escape very carefully, okay? Of course. Be killed if we get caught. I don't want to die. I'll come too. Me too. Tomomi and Kikuo agreed, and so we all decided to escape as a group. We waited for the perfect opportunity. We waited for the day where only a few staff members were at the orphanage. And we decided to let God take care of the rest. It's open. Maybe it was the way I did it. Eriko tried to open the lock several times without success, but I got it open on the first attempt. The back door opened slowly, and we felt a cool breeze. This wasn't the world of freedom just yet. In fact, it was the exact opposite. If the staff were to find out where we were, we would be in big trouble. It's a world of danger. But unless we went through that dangerous world, we wouldn't be able to go any further. Okay, let's go. Eriko wanted to say that. We're planning to leave with that as our cue. But what we heard instead wasn't Eriko's voice. What are you kids doing there? We started to run. It was raining. We all got soaked immediately and our clothes stuck to our skin. Well, that would normally be very uncomfortable. We couldn't even stop to think about that. We could only keep running in the rain. We were dashing on the gravel, but it felt more like trudging through a muddy rice field. My feet kept sinking and I couldn't pull them up. I was frustrated because no matter how fast I tried to run, I wasn't gaining any speed. I felt a sense of urgency. I heard someone yelling escape behind me, and all I could do was run like crazy. Okay, everyone go in different directions. Scatter! Come on, scatter! With Erika's cue, we all went different ways, hoping they wouldn't be coming after us. We'd be able to reunite safely at the House of Love and Mercy? All four of us there together. Or maybe someone would be missing. Maybe everyone else would make it, and I'd be the one who gets caught. My thoughts were interrupted by the voice of a staff member coming from behind me. Hold it. Wait, hold it right there. The staff members should have numbered fewer than us. So if I was lucky, they wouldn't be coming after me. Praying that the staff voices I heard in the distance weren't after me, I looked back for a moment. If I had time to turn around, why didn't I take another step forward? Why didn't I try to escape further? As I turned around, I felt a huge hand cover my face. Its pinky finger slipped into my open mouth. The hand grabbing my face shoved me into the muddy gravel. Of course, I didn't stay quiet. I fought back, and then I saw his face. It was the scariest face I'd ever seen. I realized it immediately. He only wanted to capture me alive to use me as an example. Considering what would happen to me afterwards, killing me here on the spot wouldn't pose any problem, would it? Yes. He looked at me with unworldly hate, ready to end my life here and now. His pinky finger ended up touching my tongue. The indescribable, nasty taste sent an icky feeling throughout my whole body. Bite down. Bite off the finger. That's it. This is what my murder tastes like. It's going to shove that finger down my windpipe and suffocate me. So in order to live, I fought back in the only way I could. Yeah. Something warm filled my mouth. Felt like swelling blood after a nosebleed. Spit it from my mouth and ran without turning around, leaving behind the staff member clutching his pinky finger. Little shit. Tippy'll kill you. I heard his roars echoing behind me. It wasn't a man that was after me. It was a beast. He had no interest in capturing me. His only goal was to see me dead. My shoes had slipped off. They weren't sneakers, so they came off easily while I was running like mad. My bare feet struck the gravel over and over. It was painful, but I didn't care, because if I stopped, I knew what would happen to me. Tree branches cut my face and barbed wire scratched my thighs. My feet and toes were bloody from running on gravel. The blood from the staff member's pinky finger dripped down from my mouth, staining my chin and chest. I was running for my life with scratches and cuts all over my body. If I were to get caught, I would be killed. If my pursuer had any sense, then I would be killed after being tortured. But if he didn't, I would be killed on the spot. I don't want to be killed. I don't want to be killed. My lung and heart were about to explode. My mind was blank from fear and lack of oxygen. I was about to lose consciousness. I might have given in if I didn't hear the voice of the staff member coming after me. My knees were shaking. My legs wouldn't move properly. I felt like I was going to fall like a puppet without strings. But I couldn't fall. I couldn't fall just yet. It's too late. My face had hit the gravel. I felt the awful sensation of falling, and immediately after the roar of the beast coming from behind me. My finger, my finger! Ah! I must have hit my thigh against the steering wheel when I jumped. I can feel the throbbing pain delayed slightly, sweating all over. I wiped the sweat on my forehead and put my hand on my chest, only then realizing how fast my heart was beating. I rubbed my thigh. I rubbed it in a straight line. It's not where I hit the steering wheel, but I felt like this is where it hurts. I can't see a scary beast in the moonlight car. I have my shoes on and I'm not covered in blood. My toes are fine too. Someone knocked on the window, startling me. Major, it's time. Ah, oh, thank you. I wanted to take a nap, so I told him to come wake me up in an hour. Maybe an hour was too long. Too long a nap actually makes you tired. I put my seat back up and got out of the car. The cool breeze feels good on my skin. I only see the moon. There's nothing else to see on this mountain trail. My car and a command vehicle disguised as a trailer are parked on the side of the street. I can still feel that bad taste in my mouth. I spat it out on the side of the street. But even that couldn't get rid of it. The taste of blood, saliva, and rain. Sweat from my forehead and raindrops got into my mouth, but I couldn't swallow, so I ended up drooling. That sensation around my lips brought back memories, and I tried to wipe my mouth. Maybe I'm nervous. That's why I had such a bad dream. I think there's a coffee machine in the command vehicle. An unpleasant cup of coffee will wake me up. So, has anything happened yet? No, not yet. We just got Gifu's scheduled check-in. Everything is okay over there. I see. Could someone make me a cup of coffee? Sure. Cream and sugar? Just cream, please. No, please put in some sugar too. I still have a bad taste in my mouth. The feeling of biting and crushing his little finger and his filthy blood filling my mouth. I'm sure a sweeter cup of coffee will wash down that bad taste and also wake me up from my nightmare completely. No tips. No tips about whether or not to stay in school. Alright, end of chapter 1. Next, chapter 2, let's go. Banquet to back end, over. One more speaker, then the toast starts. Are you ready? This is the back end, we're ready. We can't hear anything from inside, so please give us a cue when this speech is wrapping up. Listen up, 10 bottles of beer per table. Make sure to deliver them to your areas smoothly. Young hotel workers dressed smartly in bow ties pulled bottle after bottle out of the beer cases, preparing for the toast. They waited for their cue to serve the drinks while listening through the intercom. At a normal party, they could put bottles of beer on the table ahead of time, but if there was a lecture before the party, then they couldn't. Guests don't mind sushi going dry due to a long speech. But they don't like seeing their tables get wet with condensation from the bottles of beer. And more than anything, they certainly don't want to drink warm beer. That's why beer has to be served right before a toast. However, there's always a speech before a toast, and usually a long one. Especially at a big party like this, there are lots of guests that give speeches, so it's extremely difficult to know when to serve. For that reason, the bottles end up sitting outside by the banquet room, and people end up drinking warm beer anyway. And there were several dozen tables with white tablecloths on them in the banquet room. Approximately 8 people were sitting at each table, so there were at least a few hundred people in the room. The banquet room was filled with excitement. There were many plates with different kinds of food on each table. A sushi platter, a sashimi platter, a fruits platter. Also along the wall there were cooks ready to serve fresh sashimi. All the guests appeared to be well-mannered gentlemen, and clearly were notable people in various different fields. The huge and beautiful chandelier above them clearly indicated that this hotel had a status good enough for these famous people. An elderly gentleman was giving a lengthy speech on the stage before making a toast. Usually people don't like such long speeches, especially if it's before a toast. But the guests occasionally shouted, "Yes, yes," and sometimes gave him loud applause, filling the room with their fervor. Maybe fervor was a pleasant way to put it. It's probably more accurate to say their excitement was bizarre. Which country would actually teach people not to show respect towards their own flag? There are no others. It's happening only in Japan. That's right, that's right. It's forcing people to respect their national flag and an anthem an obstruction of their freedom. That's a foolish idea. Listen, love for one's national flag and anthem comes naturally to all. To know ourselves, to know our culture, to understand our history and our country itself. Those are the things that make you realize that you are a Japanese citizen. Makes you understand the part you play as a citizen of this country. The feeling you get from that is love towards your own country. However, those anti-Japan teachers are proclaiming that it's militaristic brainwashing. Those stupid claims are wrong. What are those people doing anyway? They're teaching our children to hate being Japanese. They're the ones brainwashing them with their self-destructive education. They're teaching our children that Japan should be ashamed of itself, that they should be ashamed of being Japanese. Forget who you are and deny your country. That's what they're teaching them. These innocent children listen and believe such nonsense. Of course they do. They go to school to learn things, right? Their teachers teach them that. Of course the children believe it. Can you believe such corruption exists? We must do something about this country's education now, no matter what it takes. The sound of applause filled the banquet room. All the gentlemen agreed and expressed that they felt the same way by cheering him on. After that, a gentleman wearing a cloth sash approached the stage. The hall welcomed him onto the stage with another round of thunderous applause. A rousing theme from a popular drama series played as he took the stage, but it was entirely unnecessary before the overwhelming applause. The man's sash carried his name written in large letters along with the name of the prefecture he was running for office in. Let me introduce you to a patriot. This man has served the former governor as his right-hand man as a director of the office of the governor for many years, supporting the prefecture's government for a long time. Since the previous governor decided to retire, he was appointed as the next governor. Fortunately, we have those anti-Japan teachers in our prefecture. While they proclaim freedom of education and freedom of thought, they're shamelessly forcing an anti-Japan education down on our children. They don't teach real history. They teach our children that everything was Japan's fault. They don't even mention the true purpose of the Greater Asia East Co-Prosperity Sphere, or all those who fought to save Asian peoples from Western control. They don't even talk about how many Asian countries were actually Western colonies before Japan stood up for our freedom during the war. Our country has recovered amazingly since then, yet our children don't know any of that because those teachers don't teach them. How truly, truly sad. I can't stand the fact that those anti-Japan teachers are actually teaching our children alongside those teachers who take teaching seriously. They're insulting our educational institutions. I will become a governor and get rid of those teachers. I will straighten out our education system and make sure our children will grow up to be decent young people who can carry on Japan's future. He announces his candidacy for the next year's prefectural governorship. We appreciate your support for him. I promise I will straighten out Japan's education system. Thank you for your support. Again, the banquet room filled with applause. The man was receiving a standing ovation. I need to explain a bit about this banquet before you misunderstand. It wasn't the conference of a political association or a lecture by a political candidate. It was hard to believe. But this was nothing more than a meeting of a college's alumni association. Everyone should be familiar with what those are. Whether it's elementary school, junior high school, or college. To graduate from one of those, you normally belong to an organization of alumni. Receive invitations for reunions where you enjoy talking about the good old days. However, there are many different types of such organizations. Some are simple, some are united with much tighter bonds. And once an organization becomes united with those tight bonds, it's no longer a simple organization of alumni. Rather, it becomes a significant faction known as an alma mater clique. Sorry, hold on. Okay. My water heater was... I think my water heater is on its last legs. In Japanese society, it's traditional for graduates to form tighter bonds that go beyond the level of an organization. Also, the more superior the alma mater, the stronger that tendency holds true. The Imperial University, one of the best universities in the country, is famous for the deep bonds its graduates form. Why do superior people like to bond? Maybe because they take pride in being superior. More than that, maintaining connections is the most significant reason. All Imperial University graduates are elites in their respective fields. They're likely to succeed and become important people. When they do, the unity of their alumni association gains immeasurable meaning. In fact, even today, the Imperial University graduates maintain their tight academic clique, and they hold greater influence throughout many different fields. They interact with other universities as well, so the graduates' bonds are extremely tight even today. Additionally, while Imperial University usually refers to the University of Tokyo, sometimes it's used to mean all 7 major universities in Japan. They are located in Tokyo, Kyoto, Tohoku, Kyushu, Hokkaido, Osaka, and Nagoya. They're all great schools. There happens to be an organization of alumni that includes all of those 7 universities. The elderly gentlemen in this banquet were each from one of those organizations. However, not every graduate would get an invitation here automatically. It is a society of select gentlemen, and in order to become a member, one must first fulfill several conditions, such as recommendation from an existing member, contribution to the society, possession of status, and so forth. Therefore, all members are important people from different fields, and obviously the power of this organization is of a political nature. But there's one more very important criterion one has to meet to join. Strong patriotism, a heart that belongs to contribute to Japan in its rebirth. As a result, this organization has become extremely nationalistic. Up on the stage, the candidate for the prefectural governorship was still talking passionately. And among those elderly gentlemen in the crowd, Takano can be found. Takano seemed used to this kind of conference. It seemed unsurprised at anything that was said. But at the same time, she looked rather fed up with it. As she was in attendance, she must have been one of their members, which meant she possessed not only extremely excellent academic background, but that the older gentleman here had acknowledged her equivalent contributions to society, and that she possessed strong patriotism. However, her academic background was the only qualification she had met to join. She was only able to join as a special case because of her connections. She didn't even hold prejudiced ideas like the other members did. So why was she here today? Probably because of the same reason as the man giving a speech up on stage. The man on the stage didn't actually have prejudiced ideas, much like Takano. He only prepared a speech that he knew the guests would like. And politicians only want votes. Each and every person has a vote, but appealing to each one of them takes too long. So the most efficient way is to appeal to organizations with a unified ideal and a unified will. In other words, this man was giving this speech so he can garner support from those powerful people. The elderly gentlemen in the banquet room will then do their best to support him, since he appears to share their ideals. But they can offer many different kinds of expediency, support, and assistance. To an outrageous degree, I might add. If the day's event continued in the same way, the organization would likely to decide to officially support him. They will probably give him a great deal of financial aid. They'll assist him in different ways as well. Of course, the man on stage won't be the only one gaining something. When he wins the election and becomes a governor next year, the organization will welcome the governor as a new member and gain even more political influence. And eventually, the organization will become so powerful that nobody can ignore it. Those of you reading this right now probably get the sense that they're no mere alumni association. You'd be absolutely right. After reaching this level, they were a fine syndicate. No, they would be a secret society if the group wasn't so open about its activities. Now, I'm sure some of you readers are brushing this off, thinking there's no way such a suspicious organization could exist in Japan. But everything I explained is entirely true. There are several such influential groups and organizations within our society, and you need to understand that they hold powerful political clout and influence our national policies. Some are alma mater cliques like the one I've described above. Others are scientific societies serving different parties, industrial groups, advisory committees, religious organizations, community service groups, and so forth. Also, there are right wings and left wings, the hawk and the dove. I won't go listing their specific names here, yet you've probably read them every now and then in your average newspaper. In Japan, the terms for such forces aren't very common. Most of you readers probably think of suspicious organizations wearing white hoods when you hear the phrase secret society and laugh it off. But unfortunately, that's a huge mistake. In America, where there's far more territory and citizens, there's way more groups like that. And they possess such vast influence that ignoring them is impossible. So the terms they use for such forces don't apply to those on the scale of this syndicate. Sometimes, people say that such groups are more powerful than the White House, and they were referred to as the shadow government. Even here in Japan, we had a shadow government before the war, our Zaibatsu. After we lost the war, the GHQ dismantled those blocks, but 40 years have passed since then. There's no guarantee our country hasn't given birth to another shadow government, given how good we are at collusion, groundwork, and backroom deals. Mio Takano was in fact attending a conference of such a shadow government. It might appear to be a guest house at a huge golf course. There were no golfers in sight. But by appearances, that must be it. But appearances can be deceiving. This wasn't a golf course, but a huge backyard. The guest house was in fact a very stylish mansion. Normal people would be surprised to learn that this was a private residence. The interior of the building was as lavish as the exterior. There were beautiful carpets on every floor, expensive-looking decorations on the wall, and expensive-looking bottles of alcohol on the shelves. And that's the kind of room Takano could be seen in. There was a knock at the door, and an old man in a wheelchair and a young woman pushing it entered. As Takano stood up to bow, the old man stopped her by raising his right hand. No, you don't need to stand up. Long time no see. Telling you to come see me any time, but you never do. It's great to see you, Kozumi-sensei. The old man sat down on the sofa with assistance from the woman. He was very old. His face was covered in wrinkles, and he could hardly do anything on his own. Even still, he still held a great deal of power and influence. Why, you haven't changed a bit, have you? I can see lipstick on your neck. Hee. Oh wait, that was her. Oh my, you haven't changed a bit, have you? I can see lipstick on your neck. Hee. Oh, that right. Good grief, how embarrassing. There was no lipstick on his neck. The woman who was helping him with his wheelchair was too beautiful to be a mere helper, so Takano had suspected something. As it turned out, her guess was correct. Although he was so old that he could die the next day, he wanted to stay sexually active until the very end. Even the Grim Reaper would think that's just absurd. Mio-chan, you've become quite beautiful yourself. You're not a little girl anymore. Oh, stop. If you really think that way, why did you try to touch my bottom, What have you got to lose from having an old guy like me touch your bottom? Sure, you have plenty of chances to touch a softer butt, don't you? Hehehe. Takano and the old man enjoyed a tasteless conversation. They had clearly known each other a long time and were very close. The young woman came back in to serve tea. After she left, the old man started to speak. Anyway, so proud of you, Mio-chan. I'm sure your grandfather in heaven is proud of you too. I hope so, but I'm not even close to approaching the level of my grandfather's great work. Takano-kun was unlucky in many different ways. The era he lived in. If he lived in a different era, I'm sure he would have finished his research. But he lived in that era, and ironically, that was why he noticed the existence of the Hinmizawa syndrome. The world today is in the nuclear era, with America and the Soviet Union glaring at each other over mounds of nuclear stockpiles. It takes nukes to have authority as a major power. Yet, we forever abandon our nukes thanks to our 3 anti-nuclear principles. In this age, we're now a nation without nukes. How deplorable. In the middle of the 20th century, despite rising tensions between East and West, there was a temporary peace known as the Cold War, brought by a balance of nukes pointed at one another. Permanent memberships in the United Nations were monopolized by nations with nuclear arms. They secured their predominance with nukes, bound the world with nuclear non-proliferation treaties, eternally banning non-nuclear nations from the world stage. For Japan to become a nation that can compete with the world, it must develop nuclear arms, or something as powerful. Sorry, I'm suppressing Metal Gear Solid references. That's what some people believed, at least. Realistically, Japan will never arm itself into nuclear weapons. I know, the citizens would accept it. Even if the government ignored their opinions and armed itself with weapons, it wouldn't work. By abandoning nuclear weaponry, Japan gained the deterrent power of the United States. Though some people thought the only way for Japan to become equal to the United States would be to get nuclear arms of their own. But realistically, that was impossible. Even if Japan armed itself with nuclear weapons, that wouldn't automatically let Japan join the great powers. Takano and the old man discussed the balance of nuclear power in the world. Eventually, the sound of the cuckoo clock reminded them to return to the main subject at hand. The old man pointed to the attaché case that had been sitting next to Takano. Takano nodded once, opened it up, and removed the contents. There were brand new bills packed in it. How much was actually there? Welcome in, Dingle. Thank you for coming by. A bundle of brand new million-yen bills in 1 centimeter, so there must have been at least enough to make up 8 digits. There was also 2 more attaché cases by her side. However, neither Takano nor the old man were surprised at all. Gonna lurk this time? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, the lurk. I appreciate that. Thank you for saying hello. Takano closed the attaché case and bowed. Thank you very much, Kozumi-sensei. I'll never forget about this. Money should be handled by younger people. I can't take it to heaven with me. I just hope this will be of assistance to you. Use it wisely. Of course I will. I'll use this money only to make my grandfather's dream come true. I envy Takano-kun. What a wonderful grandchild he has. I'm sure he is bragging about you up there. I haven't done anything yet. I'll have earned this praise when I complete my grandfather's work. So jealous. My boys are no good. They're only interested in making money. What really matters is how the money is spent. How you contribute to the country is what's most important. That's how you repay your debt to it, you know. Oh, so are you saying that treating all those lovers so lavishly is also a way of repaying your country? Of course. When they shop, the country makes money. Money goes around, you see. However, those lovers would probably end up buying some foreign goods. Things probably didn't work quite the way this old man thinks they do. Takano chuckled to herself. But the money I give to those women and the money I give you are completely different. I know that very well. You've worked hard. You've retained trust and support from so many people. This is the first time I've mentioned it, but Haruyama-kun and Mochizuki-kun both weren't sure about you because of your age at first. That's why I'm acknowledging your efforts, and that's why I'm giving you this money. I understand. Also, for me to give you this money means that I recognize you as the official successor of Takano-kun's research. Thank you very much. Thank you for believing me, I truly appreciate it. But don't mention it. This research is Takano-kun's and yours too. He wouldn't want anyone else to take it over. So thanks to you all of your efforts, I don't have to spend too much time convincing the other old folks. Completing my grandfather's research is the least I can do for him. I won't begrudge any efforts toward that aim. Takano smiled as she remembered everything she had to go through to get to this point. It went without saying, but the old men around Takano saw her as someone from their grandchildren's generation, or maybe even younger. Just how much trouble did Takano have to endure in order to gain the trust of those with such a large generation gap? It was hard to describe those who couldn't even imagine her trouble. But Takano earned it. She gathered allies, drove away enemies, garnered support, and forced them to recognize her. She spent a long time establishing trust and rising to a status that the old men would welcome. Which was all the more reason this meeting was a reward for her many days of hardship. Now that she officially had a powerful influence backing her, she could spread her wings and see the completion of her grandfather's unfinished research. Well, you've officially continuing to Kun's research. There's something I need to tell you, Mio-chan. What is it? I'm listening. The old man paused and pulled an expensive cigarette from the cigarette holder on the table. Takano lit it up for him. She didn't smoke herself, but knowing that the old man did, she kept a lighter in her pocket. The constant build-up of little gestures like that were how she gained the trust she held today. Takano-kun noticed the Hinamizawa syndrome in Manchuria, not Japan. Yes, according to my grandfather's journal, around Showa 15 he learned that many soldiers sent from Hinamizawa to the Kwantung army expressed terminal symptoms, which led him to surmise that an unknown infectious parasite dwelled in the Hinamizawa. Under the harsh conditions of war, people sometimes lost their minds. In those conditions, those who were sent to a far-off battlefield from Hinamizawa spent their days under duress, and occasionally they exhibited terminal symptoms, hallucinated, and caused twisted incidents. Yet that all occurred in the extensive chaos of the battlefield. Every incident was handled separately, and no one suspected there was an underlying cause. At the time, Takano-kun was working as a military physician in the Kwantung Army. He was researching the prevention of different infectious diseases. One day, he noticed that several incidents of deranged behavior were occurring among soldiers from the same hometown. He hypothesized that these symptoms were unique to those from Hinamizawa, and began his own personal research. He hired soldiers from Hinamizawa's workers in his research center, and studied them there. Then he learned of the unique Hinamizawa faith in Oishiro, and he was convinced that they found an infectious parasite with unique properties. Some may wonder how we could be so certain that these symptoms were caused by unusual parasites. At the beginning of the 20th century, German doctors proved that some unknown diseases were caused by bacteria and parasites. Same time, it wasn't too far of a jump to assume that unknown pathogens could be behind unknown diseases. For instance, in modern times, it's been revealed that beriberi is caused by vitamin B1 deficiency. But at the start of the 20th century, many loudly proclaimed that it was the work of an unidentified pathogen. Yes, my grandfather predicted that his research would be valuable to the army, so he asked for a budget, but they just laughed at him. As a researcher, her grandfather was very talented and passionate, but when it came to gaining the aid of political powers, he simply struck out. Hinamizawa syndrome. No, the possible existence of a parasite that infected the human brain and controlled emotions. Even though he made the remarkable achievement of discovering a mystery no one had explained before him, he was unable to convince others of that achievement, and spent his life alone, unable to garner support, and unable to achieve proper recognition for his achievement. Independent research has its limit. Talented people, funding, and backup. A research project can be successful only if all those things are present. Takano had noticed her grandfather's mistakes, and that was why she did everything she could to obtain all of that. The military at the time was hoping for a low-cost, immediate-acting weapon. While Takano's research was extremely intriguing, it didn't meet the military's expectations. But I heard you were the only one who understood my grandfather's research, weren't you? In his journal, he calls you his best friend. It came from the same hometown. It was a miracle to run into someone from the same town on such a distant battlefield. Although we weren't close in age, we became very good friends. So we talked a lot. Many times he told me his research would be revolutionary, and asked me to lay the groundwork to secure funding for full-scale research. I read in his journal that you talked to many different people about his research. Unfortunately, its value was never recognized, but I'm sure your support meant a lot to him. But I was never able to really do anything for him. That's why I want to help you, Mio-chan. Helping you is like atoning for my mistakes. Thank you very much. He was lucky to have you as his best friend. If only there were more understanding people like you in the military's upper echelon. It's very regrettable to think that my grandfather's life might have been different. The old man closed his eyes and paused for a moment. Shortly after that, he looked into the distance and spoke. Actually, that isn't true at all. The higher-ups were interested in Takano's discovery. What? I've never heard that before. Then why didn't they support his research? Something came up, and they couldn't let him look into Hinamizawa syndrome. Only few of the top brass and myself knew the reason. Now, all but myself have passed. I think I should tell you, Mio-chan, since you're carrying on his work. What came up? What was it? Takano had believed until his day that her grandfather's research was ridiculed by everyone, which was the reason why it never gained any recognition. Her grandfather had asked the military for funding so we could uncover the secret of Hinamizawa syndrome during the war. But just like the old man had said earlier, the military wanted an instant-acting weapon, and that was why they weren't interested in the research. That's what she had believed. But as it turned out, the military had actually shown an interest after all. Before I go on, I need to explain about the Kwantung Army in Manchuria at the time. While the Kwantung Army was stationed in Manchuria, opinions were divided on whether to advance our forces north or south. At the time, Japan had troops in Manchuria, but opinions were divided on advancing north to deter the Soviet Union, or advancing south to expand our territory and secure resources. With the Soviet Union and its predecessor Russia being a landlocked frozen nation, they had long yearned for an ice-free port that wouldn't freeze over in winter. They had made numerous attempts to expand their territory southward too. Those expansionist policies were said to be a cause of the Russo-Japanese War. In the history books, it said that Japan won the Russo-Japanese War, but it was actually a draw ending in peace signed at the Treaty of Portsmouth. Both sides had simply set aside their spears after mutually exhausting their forces. It wasn't like Russia capitulated and offered a complete surrender. As a result, the perception of the Russian threat continued to smolder. Later, the Russian Empire was overthrown by a revolution, but Japan was unable to shake the threat that the new Soviet Union would advance south. According to the history books, Japan went south. They signed the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact and abandoned the northern advance. As a result, the Great Patriotic War began. The Soviet Union was able to respond to pressure on their German front by pouring in their eastern forces. Though the Germans had managed to lay siege to Moscow, the Soviets launched a massive counteroffensive that reversed the tides of war. Even with the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact, the Soviets couldn't tell if Japan would attack them at some point. Because of that threat, the Soviets had to leave some forces in the Far East, and weren't able to devote enough troops to the German front. For starters, the Soviets had forged the Germany's Soviet Non-Aggression Pact too. Yet Germany broke the treaty and attacked the Soviet Union. To make matters worse, Japan and Germany had forged a military alliance. With all those factors in play, the Soviets naturally could have trusted Japan to uphold their Neutrality Pact. Ironically, the Soviet Union was the one who broke the pact, but I won't get into that now. Exactly. Hitler signed the Tripartite Act because he checked Japan to keep the Soviets' other front in check. But ultimately, Japan abandoned the North. With the superior German offensive, many supported the idea of waiting and watching it play out. They believed that if we did advance north, it would be after Germany conquered Moscow. However, that plan was exposed to Sorge. The Soviets transferred their heavy tanks from the Far East border to the German front. That secured Germany's defeat at Moscow, and the Germans began seeing a string of defeats starting with the Battle of Kursk. It was a turning point in history, huh? During the Cold War, the Soviet Union was recognized as a global power, but at least in Showa 15, the Kwantung Army didn't think it was a particular threat. Japan had earned a victory in the Russo-Japanese War, and they took the new Soviet Union government lightly, assuming it wouldn't be stable after overthrowing the Russian Empire. That underestimation was corrected after the Nomonhan incident in Showa 16. Okay. By the Showa and then the number, I'm assuming in the Showa era. So, in the 16th year of the Showa era... Hold on, now I need to look at what that exactly... Okay. Showa era was from December 25th, 1926 to January 7th, 1989. So 15. (1942) would be the 16th year, yeah, basically. Was World War I during the show? Okay, whoop, sorry, I didn't, no, that was, so, the Showa era was, I just looked up or whatever, so it was start in 1926, to 1989. So the 16th era of the Showa, the 16th year in the Showa era, which would be referring to this time frame that they're referring to, would be 1942. Because they refer to reigns under various emperors. So. And so that would have, World War I would have been different, emperor. I'm not sure. Wait, would that be the... Is it like Toe or something like that? Hold on. Wait, Taisho era? Okay. World War I, well, wait. Taisho era was 1912 to 26. So... If... So, what does Showa stand for? What? Showa refers to the emperor. Because let's see. Like the titles are like so like Showa era, the one that the Emperor Hirohito, which is the known, but it's like he received the posthumous name Showa, so they're referred to like the name that they'll get posthumously. And then that's the one that the era is given. So Showa is just the posthumous name of Emperor Hirohito. So all the eras are just different names. So like Meiji era, that's referring to the emperor at the time, during that period of time. After several fierce short-term battles with the Soviet Union's advanced mechanized corps that led to great losses, the Kwantung Army realized they shouldn't fight the Soviets, and that inclined Japan toward the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Act. But at the very least, till the Nomohan incident, the Kwantung Army was strongly conscious of the Soviets and divided on advancing north or south. Thanks to that, there were also voices advising caution, suggesting we avoid all-out war with China in order to show up our forces against the Soviets. But the Sino-Japanese War broke out after the Marco Polo Bridge incident, right? July. Showa 12th. The Japanese and Chinese armies were staring at each other across the Lugo Bridge in Beijing. It was the middle of the night on July 7th. The Japanese army fired on the Japanese army in training, and they engaged in combat. This triggered the long Sino-Japanese War. Yes, according to historical records, that incident triggered the Sino-Japanese War, but opinions divided over advancing north or south. The army was equally divided for a full-scale confrontation with China. In fact, we even received orders from General Staff Headquarters to resolve the matter quietly before the incident grew much bigger. So those supporting the northern advance wanted to settle the Battle of Lugo Bridge quietly, insisting that conflict with China was pointless in light of their anti-Soviet strategy. However, those on the mainland supporting the southern advance used this incident as cause to dispatch more troops to China. They enacted hard policies against China, and thus the Marco Polo Bridge incident became the trigger for Japan and China to enter all-out war. After that, in their bitter struggles in the Nonhan incident, Japan greatly revised their Soviet strategy. They signed the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact and secured the route for their southern advance. The Sino-Japanese War got worse and worse. If the Marco Polo Bridge incident hadn't happened, it's possible that history would have gone very differently. We would have ended up with a war with them anyway. However, if the South faction didn't get that chance, the military authorities would have kept restraining the Soviet Union, and the Soviets would have had to divide their forces between East and West. And maybe Germany could have invaded Moscow. Then Japan could have gone to Siberia. The map could have been very differently today. Germany wouldn't necessarily have won the war if it had succeeded in taking Moscow. England was keeping its strength on the other side of the Dover Strait, after all. The United States was poised to enter the conflict. Besides, Napoleon once occupied Moscow, but in the end he couldn't beat their winter and had to withdraw. It was one of those ifs, huh? The Axis might have won the war. It's possible that the gunshot from the Marco Polo Bridge incident changed the tide of history. Both sides had different opinions on who fired the first shot, right? According to the Japanese side, a Chinese soldier fired a shot at a Japanese soldier who got too close to the Chinese camp. However, the Chinese side claimed the shot was a conspiracy invented by the Japanese military. But the shot was fired. Even though nobody knew who actually pulled the trigger, it sparked the Sino-Japanese War. Yes, that's what the history books say. But Kozumi-sensei, what does this have to do with my grandfather? Listen, for all this stuff about talking about World War II, and now, like, epidemiology and stuff like that, and seriously, when this gets uploaded to YouTube... oh gosh. At least I'm way away from having to worry about monetization. Though I feel like something's going to pop up now on, like... Someone please let me know. I'll probably be checking or whatever, but I want to know if, like, any of the YouTube stuff, like, flags... if my video happens to get, like, one of those little warning things about, like, talking about something. I feel like if that happens, I feel like I'll have, like, unlocked an achievement or something. It's like, and all I did was just play this game. Educational video. You know, or I could just... When it asked me, is this video for children, you know, I could mark it, like, as, yes, it is, as well, and then, you know, make a whole bunch of... No, wait. This video wouldn't be, like... I still haven't talked about enough cursed things to make it popular on YouTube Kids. Oh gosh. Also, the fact that Anyway, but Kozumi-sensei, what does that have to do with my grandfather? The Marco Polo Ridge incident. A shot was fired at a unit that was training in the middle of the night. Everyone was summoned for a roll call. They were missing one soldier. The soldier came back later. It was said that he was sent as a messenger and got too close to the Chinese camp. By the way, did you know that soldier was from Hinamizawa? Eh? Really? When Takano was talking about Hinamizawa syndrome, he said that soldiers from Hinamizawa could suddenly fall into a deranged state. And we realized that the soldier from the Marco Polo Bridge incident was in fact from Hinamizawa. Then what about the first shot fired? I don't know the truth, but I think it's possible that soldier in the terminal stage of Hinamizawa syndrome fired the shot. That soldier was killed in the incident. Since there was no record of it, nobody knows exactly how he died. The Japanese side claimed that the Chinese army had fired at them and negotiated with that in mind. Just a scant few days after the incident, Japan demanded an apology from the Chinese and, as a show of force, dispatched 3 divisions of reinforcements. The Chinese side was, of course, opposed to that. The situation escalated at once. Research into Hinamizawa syndrome continued. The higher-ups thought it would negatively influence the Japanese army's claims. So in order to avoid the risk of traversing that political gray zone, they rejected Takano's research. So because of that, they refused to even consider my grandfather's research long after the war ended too. Yes, that's exactly it. The war is over now, but there are still some conflicts there regarding historical recognition. Even if Takano didn't mean for it to happen, if his research as Hinamizawa syndrome became public, it might cause a resurgence of quarrels over the long-ended war. Certain authorities were afraid of that, so they made sure his research was ignored even after the war. I was long warned not to aid him in any way myself. Takano tried to remain calm, but she couldn't stop herself from grimacing. She had just found out the real reason why her grandfather's research had been ignored. It was because of secret maneuvers by political masterminds. I feel like masterminds is kind of, yeah, giving a lot of credit. I'm just gonna say, if you look into a lot of, Japan made many calculated decisions during that period. But man, did they suck at math. Anyway. I mean, I'm not just read, like, literally, like, it's, like, one of the big issues was, like, they knew they didn't have the resources for a large-scale conflict, but they kept on getting into more and more ones. So, like years before World War II, like, to your talking what a child thinks, they don't understand. Well, at the time of this is like Takano talking or whatever. It's supposedly like an adult, so. So, everyone is apparently an adult in this situation, because it's Takano. At this point, I'm guessing it's somewhere in her adulthood. So probably maybe like just several years before we get to like Hinamizawa events that we've been looking at. Those masterminds feared it so much. Ironically, that meant they acknowledged the importance of his research. Takano was saddened and frustrated to no end by her grandfather's lonely life. However, they're all dead now. The only one who knows about this. Takano was still alive. I was going to apologize to him and give him my unconditional support, but he's no longer around. And that's why I'm apologizing to you and offering to give you my full support instead. Are you sure? Let research into Miyazawa's syndrome dredge up those same subjects again. It's different now. Besides, research into the Himizawa syndrome may produce more than a mere local disease. On your research, post-war Japan may gain a trump card that makes it a world power once more. So the tides and times have changed then. That's right. Fortunately, Takano didn't live long enough to see that tide change. But he has you to continue his research. So as long as I'm alive, I'll give you my full support. I promised to help Takano, but because of various things, I couldn't do anything. So I want to make up for that as long as I'm alive. I think that's the least I can do for the man who called me his best friend. Kozumi-sensei, thank you so much. Don't mention it. Glad I was able to tell you everything before I died. Anyway, till I'm gone, I'll make sure you get everything you need, okay? So if anything comes up, be sure to let me know. Funny how Japan is still behind when it comes to fashion. Still use the same cuts as those old occupational forces did have. Look at the pictures of the emperor during the newest coronation of the British monarch. See how outdated his suit. See how his suit is. So like the different cuts of suits. I don't like, I guess is it not like a slim cut or whatever? I'm gonna be honest. Well, I guess in my case, I can't fit in a slim cut, so... I don't, that's odd. I'm not that very knowledgeable on, like, different cuts or whatever, so I'm even behind her on stuff. Even behind her on stuff? Even more behind on... whatever. At the end of the day, it's not what you wear, it's how you wear it. So, I mean, you know, it's not, so, you know, it's not a matter of if one is wearing an ahegao hoodie or not. It is a matter of how you wear that ahegao hoodie. That was a joke, please don't. Oh gosh, I'm in trouble now. Social credit just took a major nosedive. Like I had any to begin with. So not knowledgeable, just look at the picture of him during the coronation and you know what I mean. Okay. I'll have to look at that later, I guess. I'll have to look at it later. If anything comes up, be sure to let me know. I'll do anything for you. Takano couldn't even imagine what kind of bond this old man and her grandfather had between them. But thanks to that bond, Takano was able to gain a powerful supporter. Tears welled up in Takano's eyes as she gave him an emotional look, but in her mind she was practically dancing at the promise of the old man's full support. The old man and Takano both bowed at the same time to show each other their appreciation. Once that was done, the old man became a little more serious. After that far too lengthy preamble, he finally said what he really wanted to tell her. Should have wear the hiccup to each job interview I could. I mean, there's probably like a select few job interviews that might actually get you bonus points. Most, but I'm pretty sure 99% of them it's probably gonna frown on that. There's like there you have it. This is what I wanted to say. The Hinamizawa syndrome has the potential power to make history, may even twist the fate of our country. So keep that in mind and be careful with your research. After the proprietor finished serving the food, she bowed and left. The room was very tastefully put together, reminding them of a tea ceremony room, although it was sparsely decorated. Quite a bit of money had obviously gone into it. This was a very famous Japanese restaurant, where many high-up officials and other important people held secret meetings. Takano was there, accompanied by about 5 gentlemen. She was sitting slightly further away from the men. They were clearly in a much more important position than she was. One of the men, wearing an expensive double-breasted suit, told Takano not to be so nervous. Please relax, Takano-san. What we read is very interesting to us. I can't believe this research was just sitting there for dozens of years. It is surprising. I thought most of the research on BC weapons. I'm gonna guess that's biochemical weapons. Biochemical weapons the Japanese military conducted during the war failed to bear fruit. And nothing was left after the US military confiscated even the fundamental research. I heard this research was barely even glanced at by the top brass. Listen. You know the events in this game aren't true. For sure. 'Cause, if it was... we all know there would have been declassified documents by now detailing how the CIA or something, American intelligence agencies took all the research and continued it. It hurts because it's true. Operation Paperclip. What the crap is that? Everyone's looking at me. You need to stop talking about this. Virgil's going off the dark deep end. He's gonna bust out his little pincushion. Not pincushion. He's gonna like his corkboard of little photos and news articles or whatever, all attached with pieces of string. Listen, guys. Listen. I gotta tell you what they're doing to our toothpaste, folks. And our deodorant. Okay, I'm gonna stop that. Oh no. Listen, it's 91 degrees Fahrenheit where I am. Which that's, excuse me, 89 degrees Fahrenheit. At currently, it's well in the nighttime, yet it's still, in an hour and a half, it'll be midnight where I am. But it's 89 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 31.6 degrees Celsius. So the heat's affecting my brain, that's what I'm saying. Okay? It's not the Hinamizawa syndrome parasites, it's just flat. I'm going crazy. And it's not even July. It's still June. I am die. She's wearing a tailcoat, which under the right circuits could look good, but sadly did have a cape or top hat or gloves and thickly striped suit pants. I don't get that the stripes would not... If you're doing like a tailcoat, he would at least have a vest, right? But yeah, the striped pants, I don't think... Yeah, that doesn't sound like it would look good. And yeah, if you are, you want to have like have gloves. I mean, you don't necessarily do the top hat or whatever, but or cane, but definitely like gloves. It just feels a weird. It just looks weird. It's like you want to. It's kind of like I want to do the Monopoly Man thing, but I'm not too sure about it. So I'm only going to go half the way there. Which, at that point, you know, they're just making it worse, okay? Because if you're gonna do something, you gotta go all out, okay? If you're gonna do something, like, way different that's gonna stand you out, you gotta either go balls out or just go home. Okay? That's... Okay? Because if you go out, even if you look ridiculous, people are going, you know what? I admire your courage. You know? That they do that. But if not, if you just do it halfway, then you're just like... you just look stupid or something, you know? Is one it with a split tail but a one piece? Okay. Alright, now I have to look at this. Alright, now it's... Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. Although it's more the pants than anything. The pants are way too baggy. Like, if they were just kind of like a standard cut, it'd probably be okay. And maybe a little bit darker. But... because he has a very thin frame. So, it's seriously messing with me when I look at it. Anyway. just really did. Considering the type of event, whatever, it wouldn't be like the type of event. Honestly, like looking dated or whatever. Also, it's if you are an emperor, or like, then it's kind of, if you're an emperor of a country, you can kind of like get away with wearing outdated clothing or stuff like that. But let's continue, right? Yeah. It's really just the one thing. If he didn't have like the baggy pants, you know, then it would be okay. If he just went with solid black pants that were just like just a medium. They didn't even have to. We don't have to be like a slim cut. Just like, you know, normal. It just look baggy. It just looks weird. It makes you look like. What's that song or whatever? I wear my granddad's clothes. I wear your granddad's clothes. I look incredible. Got these from the thrift shop down the road. Whatever it was. It has that vibe to it, okay? Those pants. Specifically the pants. Weird Al. Well, I think that was like from like a melody or a medley, excuse me. A medley of songs. There's like one, so. I think it was originally a song from like some dumb boy band. I don't mean even like the like classic early 2000s boy band. I just mean like the 2012 boy band stuff. Hi, Pyro. Kevin, we got on a thing critiquing the Japanese emperor's clothing choice for King Charles's coronation. It's a weird. That was a parody of Macklemore's thrift shop and parody boy. Okay. It's once again, it is 89 degrees Fahrenheit where I am at 10:42 p.m. The heat is messing with me. That is my story, and I'm sticking to it. Anyway. Ahem. See, so that's why nobody knew about it, and GHQ'd. Didn't investigate it. So where I'm at, thank you. Oh wow, you got 2 degrees cooler. It's practically a fridge where you are. No worries, just stay cool. In fact, I did like learn a thing or whatever. I don't know if it's true or I haven't tried it yet or whatever. But apparently, if you have just like a standard fan, but you like put some like hanging ice pack in front of it, apparently you get like impromptu effective AC. I haven't tried that, but honestly, it feels like it sounds like something that would actually work pretty well. You know, it would get tricky to like affix an ice pack that would be, and also you'd have to get like something that would work just like long and flexible or whatever. This fan will help, I can see. Yeah, honestly, just a fan's gonna help, but adding for extra oomph for some places, you know. I'm pretty. I was about to say, If it was 87 degrees Celsius, he did. Okay. That's that is a literal oven at that point. Not like on high or whatever, but still, that's an oven. Although you would live up to the pyro part of your name, I think. 67 at the moment here in morning hours. Nice. Nice, nice. See. Interesting that Dr. Katano... Interesting that Dr. Takano's research would be succeeded by a different Takano-san. I suppose that's fate. It's like the deceased is using her body to complete his life's work. Hehe. Maybe that's true. I feel a mysterious connection to him, too. Takano adored Takano Hifumi and called him grandfather, but she hadn't revealed that relationship to other. 19 degrees Celsius. Yep. Yep. She realized it wouldn't be beneficial for people to think she was involving personal feelings in her continuing Dr. Takano's research. Publicly, she had once exchanges with Takano Fumi, and after his death, discovered his research documents with his remains and chose to carry it on. At least that's how the story went. Well then, what do you think? The defense agency was very interested. According to Nakagawa-kun, the defense agency's technical research and development institute showed great interest. They offered to sponsor the research too. Just do the meme, everything is on fire. This is fine. I'm not gonna lie, that this is fine meme, that's on us. I was even thinking about this earlier today. Feels like my mood in general. Just any given moment that I feel kinship with that meme. Okay, I'm gonna be It's wonderful. Congratulations, Takano-san. Thank you very much. It's what they said. There's a research council for next-generation deterrence being led by experts from several different ministries. One of those is called the Alphabet Project. Have you heard of it, Takano-san? There's no way she would know about something like that. It is very possible for these nationalists to research something dangerous without citizens knowing about it. Society forms something like a web made of connections between people. People hold hands with other people who share the same ideas and end up knitting a net. Of course, some nets are well known, but there are secret ones too. There was no way of guessing just how the men at this meeting were connected. A society involving research into deterrent weapons for the next generation. The Alphabet Project. I'm just thinking of, like, morbid versions of... What does W stand for, kids? That's right. It stands for war crimes. Okay. It's a weird invisible net called Worldwide Net, apparently. I saw what you did there. Those words, it was possible to imagine what that might entail. Deterrent weapons. That usually refers to nuclear technology. F is for fire, burns down the whole town. U is for uranium bombs. N is for no survivors when you're having... Karaoke was last night, Pyro. Oh gosh. Weapons are normally used to destroy enemies. However, the general idea of deterrent weapons is very different. Weapons are normally used to destroy enemies. I know that has like the, what was that image or whatever of the people die when they are killed energy. The more you know. Oh gosh. I need to add a the more you know, like, video redeem thing going on now. At some point soon. I feel like that's gonna work. But Carl, that kills people. Nuclear weapons are largely used as a threat to prevent enemy invasion.
So I went up to him.
Yes?
And I stabbed him 37 times in the chest.
Carl, that kills people!
Oh.
Oh, thank you for the fluid check. Both the US and Soviets possessed large stockpiles of nuclear arms, keeping each other in check, but they will never actually use them. Because if they did, there'd be a nuclear war, and both countries would be destroyed. So they're like a legendary weapon you never draw. Of course, that last resort only works because both sides have nuclear weapons. If one side lacks them, then they lose all military negotiation power. In other words, nations without nukes are powerless before nuclear-armed states. That can't be true. Japan abandoned nukes and it still functions as a nation today. Or some people may be thinking, but they're wrong. Japan abandoned nukes but lies under the nuclear umbrella by allying itself with America. And that means the nation functions thanks to America's nukes. However, that also means we must resign ourselves to forever being a vassal of America. In order for Japan to escape that and become a powerful nation equal to America, it must possess its own deterrence arms and step out of that nuclear umbrella. That society must have been put together by experts who believe in that ideal. Given that, even the name Alphabet Project makes sense. Nuclear weapons are weapons of mass destruction. However, weapons of mass destruction aren't always nuclear. Although I will say, I will say, which is smarter? Having to build up a whole bunch of, like, having to like support massive army weapons, all that infrastructure and weapons research and stuff like that. Having all that for yourself but having to pay for it and support it, both money and manpower, or getting the benefit of it, but not actually having to do. Listen, if you can guarantee that you're gonna get support of something and stuff like that, it effectively is yours. Just I don't know. That's just my perspective on it. I'm just gonna say that. Benefit and use the money and... Yeah, exactly. It's like getting someone else to pay the check, okay? Someone else getting to cover the tab on your... Also, in such an instance or whatever, it also means you become, in some ways, less of a target, because then you're not the main focus of someone's stuff. So, which is the better position is kind of more of a feels more of a semantic issue, honestly. But there's a thing called soft power, okay? And it's extremely powerful when you know how to use it. But obviously it requires skill and is a bit tricky. And honestly, it's not flashy, but it works and is very effective when used properly. It's like, how do you think why do you think the late Queen Elizabeth was so effective for so many years and had so much influence? Because she knows how to do soft sounds. Listen, $1's worth of soft power is easily worth $10 worth of bullets. Okay, to put it somewhat. Japan is very pride-based, but also masters soft power. Yeah, I mean that's part of part of it's having to do because of the situation with the treaties that came out of World War II. So it's like you have to learn how to do that. That's the option. That was the only option available. I guess it wasn't really an option. It was more of the whatever. Because you can't just use, there's not a Japanese army. There's there's a Japanese self-defense force. So you could not really do anything you can't do any by treaty you couldn't do the overt way of doing it. Also, they tried the overt way a bit before. The end result was not very good. So welcome, Rubio. Thank you for coming in. We are playing. We are going through the 8th volume /chapter of Higurashi. It's like that, but advancing a company and winning over business partners and all sapper. Yeah, it's a very similar thing. There's a whole lot of crossover with it. This horror. Yeah. Even though it doesn't look at it at the moment, so it's yeah. If you do want to if this does look, I will say if this does look interesting, Higurashi, You can get the first chapter for free online, both on Steam and also on GOG. Either one of those you can get it. I don't know what you mean. I'm spooky. I mean, talking about WMDs and stuff is like pretty. It's honestly rather spoopy. So. Oh, also I mentioned I learned this not that long ago, but there's actually a mod for like the PC versions that's like an authorized or like an official unofficial mod type thing that apparently provides even further updates to the sprites, music, and backgrounds to Higurashi. And I just learned about this a few weeks ago. So, there's even voice acting apparently. So when I learned that, I was like, I've already done 7 chapters of this. I guess I'm doing the 8th one. So I could just... So, we're finishing up the series without it, but that means you'll get another way to experience it without today's. Atomic, biological, chemical. The initials of these 3 words make up ABC. That's why weapons of mass destruction are sometimes called ABC weapons. I won't go into weapons of mass destruction. That don't belong to those 3 categories. To look into the mods, I still have yet to play the visual novel. Yeah, I think it's called, I think if you just look, it's the 07th expansion. I may have read this wrong, but it may be that, like... Because I think it may have, like, stuff that was... I think there was a Twitch release of this, of Higurashi, and, like, all the voice and also, like, the new sprites were all featured in that version. So, I think the mod is basically just bringing in those from the... Basically updating the version to... Just whatever. It's weird, okay? But... It's... Yeah. Although I will say the backgrounds do become apparently, which the backgrounds especially become kind of a matter of taste, because it's apparently in the modded, they take on the, or I guess the updated. They're much more of an anime aesthetic as opposed to this kind of almost, however I would describe this, or it's almost kind of like photo, but also like impressionist. It's weird. About par with other visual novels that have been updated, like Corpse Party. Yeah, like that. ABC, alphabet. ABC. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. 1, ABC, 1, 2, 3. Baby, you and me. Anyway, in other words, Alphabet Project must be a code for research into weapons of mass destruction. As it happened, this guess of Takano's was correct. Just photos with a posterized filter, which is a good tactic to make a game like this if you aren't an artist. Oh yeah. I mean, it works. For sure. And it looks good. There's a lot of those things where it's just like knowing how to use like knowing creative ways to use like just very easy to do effects. You know, it's work smarter, not harder. Types thing. By rights, Japan should possess nuclear arms. We established ourselves as a peace-loving nation after the war, and after our vast international contributions, we've been recognized as a permanent member of the UN. Yet until we possess nuclear arms, we won't be recognized as a proper nation. This is the long-held desire of post-war Japan. Exactly. However, realistically, thanks to the nuclear I love how I'm just spontaneously not able to pronounce words. Thanks to the nuclear proliferation treaty, the major nations hold a monopoly on nukes. Worse, our domestic public opinion is growing allergic to nukes, so foreign and domestic pressures make implementing them impossible. Biological and chemical weapons are sometimes known as the poor man's nuke. Small countries that can't own nuclear weapons have already started research into that kind of weaponry. Takano-san, please don't misunderstand us, okay? The purpose of our research isn't to obtain a biological weapon, yet our goal is to prevent such weapons from coming into Japan from other countries. So this is research into self-defense. I want you to understand that. Press X to doubt. Yes, I'm aware of that. Takano hated this Japanese tendency to make excuses, but she didn't let it show on her face. No matter what they said, they already saw the value in using this research toward biological weaponry. However, in truth, that was just an excuse as well. If they actually wanted to research biological weapons, then it would be much faster to research diseases like smallpox and anthrax instead of an unidentified disease like Hinamizawa syndrome. Oh good, now I'm mentioning those, so yeah, this is... I am definitely going to get several warning levels when I labels under the VOD when I put it up on YouTube. So it wasn't actually correct to say the defense agency was interested in as a biological weapon. In other words, Takano needed a powerful sponsor who could back her up with funding, personnel, and a facility to conduct her research. So she used her connections and turned to the old men behind the government and economy, reaching out to each of them, and getting them to forcibly pull funding out of the defense agency under the excuse of its application toward biological weaponry. That was the truth. Therefore, her project wasn't officially recognized by the defense agency. To be exact, the people who secretly controlled the defense agency were the ones who knew about it. These masterminds diverted funding from the defense agency to the Alphabet Project, and then they pushed for Takano's research to be a part of it. Takano gets her funding, and the influencers get to drain public funds through kickbacks. Considering that, it was doubtful this project was genuinely about researching the next generation of deterrence arms. It was probably just an excuse for the masterminds to funnel money into their own pockets. Well, those complicated matters didn't matter to Takano. Whatever those old men and influencers were planning wasn't her business. As long as she could get the funding for her research, that was enough. Either way, Takano had found her sponsor. It was one of the biggest organizations around, too. This had always been her grandfather's dream. Takano was trying to stay calm, but he was about to jump up and down in excitement. Nakagawa-kun says that once the research gets underway, he doesn't mind buying it out. Although it's still incomplete, he definitely sees potential in it. Absolutely right. This research is only halfway complete. Sufficient funding, facilities, and personnel will be indispensable. About that. Here's where the negotiations start, but apparently they wish to take on this research in its entirety. I've had saying this, but they think the burden is too much for you to bear alone. Hearing that put quite the damper on Takano's ecstasy. I'm not trying to make money off of this. I'm working as a researcher purely out of intellectual curiosity. What I need is a sponsor. And what they seek are results. That was the relationship I had hoped to establish. Takano realized she was talking rather breathlessly, so she tried to calm herself down. Either way, they'd be backing the research. Considering they're hoping for results that merit the budget, they probably feel that Takano is still too young to handle it. I know. You've been working on this for a long time, and you don't want anyone to just grab it from you, right? I totally understand that. Of course, we've already informed them. So here's the compromise we came up with. First, we'll start your research as an offshoot of the Alphabet Project. Once you have the Board of Directors' approval, you'll be given official funding. We'll have you participate in the project as an associate researcher, and you'll take part in the research that way. If she wanted their funding, she'd have to fall under their authority, of course. So far, she had no objections. For the Research Society has listed a few conditions in exchange for funding this project. First, as was just mentioned, is to entrust the position of lead researcher to an individual that's skilled and talented in this field of research. I'd hate to interject, but who would be more knowledgeable about this than me? Other than the late Dr. Takano, of course. No. Please calm down, Takano-san. Understand how you feel. Still, how is this any different from selling my research to this individual? This isn't what we discussed at all. Calm down, Takano-san. Those cunning old men didn't miss sight of the faint leak of anger that crossed Takano's expression. They gave evasive laughs, as if remarking how immature she still was if she let her emotions show over such a little thing. However, they weren't laughing to look down on Takano. On the contrary, they were trying to tell her to wait until the end. Of course, we'll make sure you get your way. Kazumi-sensei told me to take good care of you. Do you think I would just ignore you after he told me that? Don't worry. Please let me work things out. I'll make sure you'll be happy. Oh, heading out, Sophie? Okay, you have a great night. You have a good night as well. Yes. I'll be uploading this, of course, to YouTube, so... See, I get to select the person in charge. Rin chortled except Takano. For a moment, she joined in. In other words, he meant that it would find just the right person. The defense agency had suggested finding an expert to lead the project because they didn't feel comfortable with just Takano. However, Takano's sponsor was the one tasked to find such a person. In that moment, Takano realized it. How wonderful it is to have such a powerful backer. You work it out. Oh. I'll find some candidates for you. All you have to do is pick the one you think would be the most suitable. Takano felt better after hearing that. While she wouldn't be the official head of the project, she would end up leading it from the shadows. Of course, she wasn't an expert per se. Having a partner would actually be beneficial. Give me some time to talk to the other end. I'll make sure you'll be happy with the outcome. Please just be patient for a while. I understand. Thank you for everything. By the way, it's not just the defense agency. Nagata-kun from the Ministry of Health and Welfare is willing to help you too. He introduced me to Ito-kun from the National Institute of Infectious Diseases. He's willing to help you with equipment and other technology. Really? Thank you so much. This is a national project, isn't it? Congratulations, Takano-san. This is all because of your effort and the deceased Dr. Takano's hard work. Oh no. This is all because of Dr. Takano. I haven't done anything yet. Being humble is a good virtue. Just like Kozumi-sensei told me, you truly are a nice person, aren't you? No wonder he adores you. Anyway, they want you to join the defense agency. Luckily, you have a doctor's license, right? We'll secure your position as a medical officer of the TRDI. Do you mean I'll be a public servant? I wasn't expecting that. All the organizations that are involved with the Alphabet Project are public institutions. The SDF is actually interested in this research as well, and they're making strong requests to dispatch some of their personnel too. So depending on the circumstances, you may be treated as an SDF member. Well, just think of those matters as officials squabbling over jurisdiction. So to stand above those officials, you'll need your own official position. No matter what, we'll make sure you'll be happy, so please don't worry about anything. I understand. I'll let you work things out. Knowing Dr. Takano's research was once rejected by the old Japanese military, it's hard to believe that the Self-Defense Force is interested in it now. Well, that couldn't be stopped. With the war situation worsening, the Japanese military sought something with immediate effect, something that could turn the war around. I don't think that we're looking down on Dr. Takano's research. That wasn't true, of course. Takano already heard that confession from the old man. She exhaled. To her, it was like the meeting in front of her was happening somewhere far away. She had longed for this day to come and worked so hard to reach it. Finally, her grandfather and his research were attaining recognition. This was the day she had dreamed of. So she was frightened just imagining that it might be an actual dream. True joy can't be felt all at once. Oftentimes, it's a delayed reaction. Takano thought that must be exactly what she was feeling. I imagine you'll probably be given a field officer's rank. Since you'll be second in command, you'll likely be a major. That's wonderful. Major Takano, huh? My, I'm a little jealous. As a man, I wish I had a rank like that. Boy, oh boy, Major Takano, huh? A major? What does that signify? Well, it's reasonably high in the rank system of the self-defense forces. It's like a sub-manager at a company, I guess. That will be your rank once the project gets underway. It's equivalent to a lieutenant commander in the old Japanese military. What a coincidence. Dr. Takano was also a lieutenant commander in the old military. Takano remembered suddenly. They were right. Her grandfather had been a lieutenant commander in the Japanese military. Everything she had done until today was so she could continue her grandfather's research. Now everything had fallen into place. She had even been granted the same rank as her grandfather. She had always believed that succeeding his research would be proof that they had a bond tighter than blood. And now she would even be the same rank as him. This is fate, Takano thought. Maybe this is even a message from Grandpa. Yes, it must have been a shout of encouragement from heaven. It was proof that she inherited not only his research but his will as well. Takano couldn't help but feel a sense of destiny for attaining the rank of major. Grandpa, I'm finally here. Nobody else could hear her say that, but her grandfather in heaven could. That's what Takano believed. She had only come so far. There were still a lot of things to do for this research to be recognized as a great work. Otherwise, her grandfather won't become a god. She wouldn't become one either. I like how it's like she just goes from like, well, okay, that's kind of nice too, and there it is. You must become a god. That was in her grandfather's will. It's unable to do so. That line preceded it. It was her grandfather's dying wish. Her grandfather entrusted it to her. All of his research. A god can't be physically brought back to life. God is made in the hearts of the people who remain alive. Her grandfather will live on in her heart. His exploits will be known to many, and all the scholars will fight to read his documents, to steal them from each other, and they will learn about Hifumi Takano, who began his research during the war. They will know that nobody understood him, and that he ended up devoting his lonely life to his research. And finally, they will extol his grand achievement. Okay, that's 2 chapters. Let's see, how are we doing? Let's see, honestly, let's see. Getting close to about 3 hours. Honestly. So I think I'm actually gonna call it, so yeah, we'll call it, and we'll be picking this up next time, which will be on Sunday, about 8 p.m. Central. Yes. So, okay. But thank you all for coming to start off the new chapter of Higurashi. Yes. I'll be uploading this to YouTube, so if you want to get it, watch it there, you'll be able to, should be by tomorrow, honestly. Yes.